Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Now, have you ever taken a rowing boat? No, not across the English Channel and, as a migrant coming into this country, but right down there towards Antarctic. Have you taken a rowing boat? I don't suppose you could possibly do that in a rowing boat and then get turned back because clearly they don't want you to know what's going on down there. Well, imagine if you were patrolling that area and you were the one turning people back and they were coming up with some interesting stories. Would that make you a bit suspicious about what actually is going on? Well, two gentlemen today have given that thought the premise for a new book, and we're going to explore that. You may recognize one of those characters on my guests because he wrote the famous Falsification of History. His name's John Hamer, and his co-author is Andy Ross. The book in question is 60 Degrees South, Beyond the Ice Wall. It's a novel, and we are going to have a fascinating conversation. So first of all, John, welcome back to the show. It's lovely to have you back.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, good to speak again. It's about 5 months, I think, since we last spoke. I mean, it was the beginning of December last year, I think.
That's it. It's nice having, regular people coming back because we can have a jolly good laugh and explore the subjects in a sort of, light-hearted way. Now, you've got, at this time, there's two different things about this. This is, instead of writing a factual book, or as factual as one can,
yes,
as you did with the Falsification of History, and a whole swathe, your bookcases must be sort of creaking now with the weight of the books that you do, because they're not thin books that you generally write.
Yeah, I mean this is my ninth, obviously in conjunction with Andy. So yeah, it's when we've not finished, this is going to just be the first one of a series, to be honest. So,
brilliant.
So we're planning on starting the next one, which will be a sequel to this one, very shortly.
Superb. Well, let's say hello to Andy. Hello, Andy.
Oh, hi, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Very kind of you to come on the show. It's nice to have both of you. So this was a joint venture then, the novel. We're going to find out a little bit about it. But let me just ask you, because I've been, as my audience will be aware, in the background I've been writing my little book. This isn't it. It's not ready yet. This is just a sort of an edit copy, as it were. But writing on your own is quite easy because you haven't got anybody over your shoulder telling you, you can't put that and you can't put that. How easy is it writing with the famous John Hamer?
Oh, well, I couldn't have written it without him. That's the truth, Richard. I mean,
right.
I came up with the idea about probably best part of 2 years ago now, and everybody I mentioned it to just said that's a cracking idea for a novel and a really good opportunity to entertain and to drop some truth bombs as well. And
yes.
So I kind of I wrote it initially, just the first maybe the quarter of the plot, just as a kind of a screenplay really, and but I had no idea whatsoever as to how to turn that into a novel. I've never written a novel in my life. I mean, English has always been one of my better subjects. It was my best subject at school. So coming up with ideas and putting them down on paper has never been a problem, but turning them into something that people will actually enjoy reading. And I was daunted by that challenge. By this time, I'd come across John's books. I'd read a couple of John's books already, and I'd listened to him on a whole host of podcasts. And so I just thought to myself, well, he's a Yorkshire lad. He might at least give me time of day for a short time. So I thought, well, I'll contact him through his website. Gave him a rough idea of the plot and the idea behind the book, and he came straight back, certainly within half a day, and just said, "I absolutely love the idea, Andy. Let's do it." And yeah, the rest is history. We've another 16 months I think we spent on it, and we published it in January the 11th, I think.
Fantastic.
That's how it came about. Yeah,
fresh off the press, and you've got a copy there to show us. Have you?
I have indeed. There you are.
Look at that, 60 Degrees South, Beyond the Ice Wall. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, John, let's go back to you for a second. John, this is a departure from writing factual stuff to into a novel. Did you find it tricky?
I actually have written a novel before, Richard.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Titanic's Lost Secret, which was based on RMS Olympic. So yeah, I mean, it's totally different. It's a totally different methodology of writing, if you like. I mean, it is much more difficult to write a novel than it is to write a factual book, because all you're doing is regurgitating facts with a obviously, with a factual book. But with novels, you've got to build characters. You've obviously got to have a plot, and you've got to make it interesting, and you've got to make people want to continue reading it. So yeah, it's not an easy process. Well, certainly it wasn't for me. I'm more of a I'm more of a left brain thinker really than a right brain thinker. So creativity doesn't come that easily to me. So yeah, it is a more difficult process. But I think the results speak for themselves, and it's got lots and lots of 5-star reviews on Amazon already. So we're very, very proud of what we've done, to be honest. And I must just say this as well. I'd been planning on writing another novel, encouraged by my friend Paul Hargreaves in Blackburn. Paul, hi if you're watching. He'd been saying to me for quite a while, the way to get to normies, John, is to write novels. Writing it as though it's fiction. Well, it is fiction, but putting truth bombs in there, and that's going to make them think. And that kind of alludes back to what you were saying earlier, Richard. Yeah, it's about grabbing people's interest. Who normally, if we'd presented all this stuff as factual, they would have just dismissed it. So yes. It's just another way of getting to a wider audience and maybe hopefully opening a few people's eyes as to what's really going on.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to reading it because I understand it's a heartthrob. There's some, saucy scenes and there's all this romance. It's a real Mills. Oh, wait a minute, I'm reading wrong.
No, that's
notes
the wrong
here.
One.
Yeah. John, have you? Let's find out a little bit about your background, and then we'll talk about the book because obviously the book is the thing that everybody wants to hear about. But let's just. What's your background? Because I know John now, and I've read some of his books, and they're fantastic, of course. And by the way, everybody should be buying them.
Thank you.
He's paid me a lot to say that.
Yeah. The check's in the post, Richard.
Yeah. Thanks. It's funny how the post service never seems to deliver. But there we are. So never mind. John, Andy, what's your background?
Well, my background is born and bred Yorkshire lad. I live within a stone's throw of the Yorkshire Dales. And
lovely.
And very much like John, when I was in kind of a mainstream career, I worked in IT. I was a software developer for nigh on 30 years. And then in 2009, the corporate world, I started to see through it a little bit and just realised that I was on kind of like a hamster wheel of slavery, really, to be fair.
Yes.
And I didn't like the way that the business I worked for was going. So I packed all that in. By this time, I'd started looking at one or two things, particularly the moon landings. And that went back right to a conversation in a pub in the mid-90s with a proper roughneck Yorkshireman who used to be in our quiz team. He was a pretty tough nut, this guy. And he just said to me one night over a few pints in the pub, he just went, we didn't effing go to the moon, don't you, Andy? We never effing did. And I went, really? What? Why? Yeah, really? And he gave me a book. Cannot remember the name of the book at all. I cannot remember it. But I read it and I thought, do you know something? I think there might be something in this. And then, so by the time I got to like the 2005s to 2009s, I'd rumbled the moon landings. I was highly suspicious of NASA. 9/11 was complete, I knew all about 9/11. Even on the day itself, when I was watching the whole thing unfold, I was thinking to myself things like, how can an aluminium airliner slice through concrete, steel and glass? How can it do this? Why aren't there any engine parts falling to the ground? Why did those towers just come? What was WTC7 about? So to be honest, by the time it got round to 2020, I was going down a few rabbit holes, but I would say I was still relatively in normie land. And then obviously March 2020 hit, and after about 3 weeks sitting in the garden in lovely sunny weather, myself and my wife just started to think, there's something not right about this. There's something severely not right about this. And then, and from then, the last 5 years since then, Richard, have just been an absolute rabbit hole roller coaster, to be fair.
Yes, I know that feeling.
Yeah. And since 2009, both myself and my wife have run our own little photography business. So she's a photographer and I do all the boring stuff. Yeah. So,
You're the dog's body.
I'm
You're
a
the
general dogs body, yeah. We basically just do school and preschool photography now. She used to do weddings and portraits and all that kind of stuff. But we now have a nice small school portrait photography business that's nice and manageable, and gives me lots and lots of time to do other things.
So
Yeah.
are you still on near the Yorkshire Dales?
Yeah. I live in a little village called Addingham. It's 3 miles away from one of the landmark locations in the Dales, which is Bolton Abbey. So I don't.
Ah,
Yeah.
right,
So
yeah.
I'm about
Well,
3 miles from there. Yeah.
I was thinking that James Herriot, of course, famously was in that neck of the woods.
Yeah.
It's a long way from the vet stories to the Antarctic stories, isn't it?
It's a long way. Yeah.
It's a long way.
Yeah.
So let's find out a little bit about the book then. Obviously, people are going to be itching to find out what your take is on it and what the story is about.
Yeah.
Who would like to give us, enough of the plot to sort of whet our appetite, but don't give us too much because we don't want to know the ending. Clearly,
John's really good at this. So let's hand over to
John.
John.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Is he? Okay,
Yeah,
right.
he's really
Right.
good at it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, basically, I mean, the book starts off the very first chapter, a few pages. We are on board not we, but the characters are on board a sport fishing boat, which has left New Zealand, the southernmost tip of New Zealand, on ostensibly on a whale watching and fishing trip, but really they're going to see if there's any truth in the rumours about once you hit 60 degrees south, which is where the book's title comes from, is it true that you will get turned back? So, we're on board this ship and that's going along, and then they get intercepted by a UN gunboat right on cue, 60 degrees south, and get told to turn back. Well, I'll leave that bit there. That's, I won't say what happens then. But then the story changes tack, and we are introduced to an RAF pilot by the name of Adam, and he is seconded to. He has absolutely no idea where he's going. He's not awake. He doesn't know what's going on, but he gets seconded to the UN at one of their interceptor bases on King George Island. King George Island is about 500 miles south of Tierra del Fuego, just off the tip of South America. And King George Island is about 500 miles south, as I say, and that is at 62 degrees north. And he's tasked with intercepting any planes that try to cross the 60th parallel in that kind of neck of the woods. And, he goes on several missions to intercept. He turns them back, but he has some very interesting conversations with the pilots, when he asks them why they're doing this. And then they kind of tell him, and this is where a few of the truth bombs begin to come out. And he actually meets up with one of his old comrades from the Middle East war in Syria when was it, 2012, 2011?
Yeah.
And he is also a normie, but between them they start to suss out what is going on, and eventually they go on some adventures down way into Antarctica, and I don't really want to give the game away any more than that.
No, of course.
Have you got something more to add to that, Andy? Or?
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of adventures unfold once Adam is the initial one who's kind of
he's the main character.
Yeah, he's the main character. He's the one who first starts to rumble things. So he goes first, but there's lots and lots of adventures beyond the ice wall and beyond the ice wall.
Yes.
And there's a lot of adventure in it. Like you say, there's a bit of romance. There's a couple of Mills and Boone type chapters. So
Hardly.
That's what my wife calls it.
Bit of an exaggeration.
She said it was Mills and Boone, that chapter. So I go along.
Well,
with
yeah.
that. She enjoyed it anyway. So there's a little bit of romance in it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of humanity in it as well. There's some lovely characters. There's some badasses as well.
Yes.
And
well, we need those, don't we?
So there's but there's not a multitude of characters, because one thing I don't like about books is if there's just too many characters.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like a manageable number of characters, and I think we have done that, John.
Yeah,
Don't you?
definitely. But what there is also is there are flashbacks, historical
Yeah.
flashbacks to various people,
Yeah.
such as Scott of the Antarctic, Amelia Earhart, the American flyer in the 1930s who disappeared. Yeah, so there's a whole mishmash of stuff, but it sounds complicated, but trust me, it isn't.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
When you've got all of the plot in your head, it's
Exactly.
so much that you want to disseminate, but of course it all unfolds in the story.
Of course. Yeah.
And I mentioned before we started recording to Andy, I asked about Admiral Byrd because he's kind of like the famous guy who,
Yes.
I can't remember when it was, in the 40s, was it?
Yeah.
46, 47, Operation
There you
High
go.
Jump. Yeah.
And he flew across and came back, and people question whether his diaries are accurate or truthful or whatever.
Yeah.
Just on that, just as a matter of, as the authors of it, I mean, presumably you've got your own theories about what might be down there. What without sort of going into what the book is saying, what would be your theories about that neck of the woods?
Well, obviously, do you want me to go, Andy, or do you want to say something?
I've got a couple of things to say on that. Yeah,
Go ahead,
I mean,
then. Go first.
I mean, my view is, I'm as you mentioned, Admiral Richard E. Byrd. He published, or there were some diaries, or his diary was published by, I think, his son after his death. But one thing that he did in person was a famous interview on American television in 1954, where he said that there was a landmass larger than the United States of America beyond the South Pole that had never been seen by humankind and contained resources beyond our understanding. Wildest dreams, yeah. And he said that there were fertile areas where it was warmer, there was grass, there was trees, there were animals. And for me, I put credence on that. That's where I am with it. I'm not necessarily with him with his diaries, because his diaries took it a stage further, and you could think, well, they're a little bit too fantastic, really. But I'm not saying it's impossible what's in his diaries. But I hang my hat on that interview that he did in 1954, and I kind of had that in mind when I came up with the idea of what these guys might discover when they fly further south.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't think it's giving too much away to say that these two guys, these two RAF pilots, they actually fly beyond the ice wall, they fly beyond the South Pole, and they come to a green and pleasant land, the one that Admiral Byrd described in his diaries. Whether the diaries are fake or real, that's neither here nor there. We don't know the answer to that. But they came upon this green and pleasant land where another race of people live, and these people were descended from the Aztecs and Incas who fled South America according to our book. They fled South America in the 17th century to avoid the Spanish conquistadors, because there was massive genocide going on, and they somehow ended up there. So that's the stories based on what happens when they get there. And again, I don't want to give too much away about that.
No, of course.
Yeah.
When did they start the business of stopping people going beyond the 60th parallel? When did that start?
1959, the Antarctic Treaty.
Yeah.
Right. So prior to that, you could do it if you had the means.
If you had the means, yeah.
Yes, if you had the means, yeah. But the Antarctic Treaty is a very, very strange thing when you examine it carefully, because it's the only treaty that was signed by most of the world, even the protagonists in the Cold War, obviously mainly Russia and America, but China as a signature, all the major nations, even though they generally oppose each other on everything, especially where the United Nations is concerned and stuff like that, they all signed this Antarctic Treaty. So it begs the question, what the hell is going on down there? Why are you not allowed to go beyond 60 degrees south? Because when you think about it, obviously the South Pole allegedly is 90 degrees south. So what they're saying is that 1/3 of the southern hemisphere is out of bounds to humanity.
Right. Yeah. And you've got to ask, by what authority have they got, even though they may be leaders of these countries, to prevent other people from going there?
Exactly that. I mean, some people say, "Oh, and this is just preempting any kind of negativity from the audience there." I'm not saying there will be, but I've had people say to me, "Oh, John, that's nonsense. You know, I've been on a cruise to the Antarctic." Well, no, you haven't,
No.
because you don't actually get to the Antarctic on those cruises.
No.
What you get, where you get, is to King George Island, where these two guys are based.
Yep.
Now, King George Island at 62 degrees south is not in the Antarctic. It is within the Antarctic Circle, but
No.
it's not in the Antarctic continent itself. It's a separate island. It looks
Right.
like the Antarctic because it's just totally icebound. And that's another thing, isn't it, Andy? You mentioned this about the difference between the northern and southern hemispheres.
Yeah, I mean, one of the very, very first questions that Adam asks when he gets down there is because he notices how icebound and how incredibly cold it is, and he asks the other guy. It was called Dobbo for just for information. He's called Samuel Dobson, but he's known as Dobbo. And Adam and Dobbo were talking, and Adam says to him, "Well, have you ever been to the Faroe Islands?" And Dobbo goes, "No. You know, what's your point? What you're driving at?" And he goes, "Well, the Faroe Islands are 62 degrees north, and the Faroe Islands are warm and pleasant in the summer. They get pretty cold in winter, but it's bearable. There are animals there. There are people. It rains a lot. There are lakes, rivers, and
Forests.
Forests. It's an inhabitable place, and I mean, and it's actually quite a way south of Iceland." And
Right.
he's saying, "Well, how is it so cold here?" And that's in my opinion, that's how they get away with telling people they're going on Antarctic cruises, because as John says, you go down to King George Island, or King George Island is part of the South Shetlands group. Now, the South Shetlands is at the northern tip of the Antarctic Peninsula. Yeah, so you're not going to Antarctica at all. You're going to the southern hemisphere equivalent of the Faroe Islands. Now, I've been to Iceland, and I think, have you been to Iceland, John, ever?
No, I've
Have you,
flown
Richard?
over it, but I've never been to it.
Have you ever been to it, Richard?
No.
No, I mean, I went to Iceland, and I was on the cusp, in the north of it, I was on the cusp of the Arctic Circle. But I didn't go back home and tell everybody I'd been on an Arctic adventure.
No, of
I've
course.
just been to Iceland. I've been to
Yes.
Iceland.
Yeah. Yeah, but people only say that, to be fair, because that's what they're told.
Yeah,
They believe that they're in
absolutely, yeah.
Antarctica. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're not. You, as John said, you're 3 degrees shy of the actual Antarctic Circle when you go down there.
Yes. So when it comes to people like Scott went to the Antarctic. Did he?
He did.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
So how much do we believe that that's true? Because the problem with Mr. Hamer is that when you've read his book like this, you question him in everything unless you've actually done it yourself. So, that's an interesting conundrum.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Richard. And funnily enough, it's one that we've addressed within the book. But obviously that's fiction, but it's kind of, it's a reasonable inference, shall we say,
right,
as to what may have happened. We don't know for sure. We can never know for sure. But Scott makes an appearance. Scott and his party make an appearance. They go... first of all, when they get near what they assume to be the South Pole, they believe the compasses are malfunctioning, because as they get to the South Pole, the compass should swing round back north again, but it doesn't do that, and they carry on. They go to 90.5 degrees south, and all 5 of the expedition believe that the compasses are malfunctioning. Sorry about this. I'm having headset problems here. That's better. And so we make a big play of that, and then there is a subsequent there's a series of flashbacks, as that expedition progresses, and then we make a big play of what happens at the end of that particular section, that particular story.
Right.
So there's that, and then there's the Amelia Earhart connection. Now, she was a very interesting character, Amelia.
She was.
Earhart.
Yeah.
She was big buddies with Admiral Byrd.
Was she?
Yep.
She was.
Yep.
And also Admiral Byrd was big buddies with JFK as well, and also with a guy by the name of
James
James
Forrestal.
James Forrestal, who was U.S. Secretary of Defense, who was murdered. He was suicided, in fact, in 1949. Now, all four of those characters are all connected intrinsically, and that's the fact bit, not the fiction bit. But obviously, we turn some of that into fiction, and we make a kind of a little aside out of that as well. So so there's lots and lots of different little diversions, which everyone finds very interesting.
And this is the beauty of writing fiction.
Yes.
And I've certainly found it with my little book here, which is about a small market town that decide they don't want the net zero policies and 5G, and they start to wake up, and so they all push back. And it's a sort of and you've got to sort of work it all out how it might feasibly work, so it's believable to the audience, but at the same time they know it's fictional, but they could do it, and so you work out all of that. And so fiction is a really good method of coming up with ideas that what might happen. And of course you can position characters on either side of the argument and say, well, that's a load of rubbish. And somebody might, it's like, for example, in mine, they say, why are you worried about 5G? And it's like, well, here, this is one of these radiation meters. Let's just walk up to the thing. Oh my God, it's off the scale. And so you can have those conversations which the reader is eavesdropping in on.
That's right.
And we'll say, oh, well, there may be something to this, even though it's in a story. Is that how you found it? I mean, you're saying yes, so I'm assuming that is.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the Adam, the pilot, when he first starts flying his intercept missions, when they get an alert that there's a plane trying to cross the 60th parallel, he'll go up there and he'll try and to get them to turn back. They don't always respond immediately, but he gets into conversation with them on several occasions, and these are all truthers. So they're telling him all about, Antarctica and the fact that the secret's down there. They don't want us to know, so we're trying to investigate it. Blah blah blah. So that turns into dialogue about truth, and not just about Antarctic truth, but it kind of spills over into other truth subjects as well. So that's the mechanism that we use to introduce truth in other areas as well.
Yeah, and I mean, the creative part is great fun, because when you're writing, and I haven't written fact, but when you're writing fiction, you've got lots of leeway, because you can, not only make things up, but you can theorize. And of course you can't be wrong.
Absolutely.
But it makes people think, and they can go, oh, I wonder if they've got a point here. I wonder if. How much research have you had to do to be able to sort of get those truths? I mean, obviously John's been writing this for a long time and nipping down rabbit holes. But how long does it take to get to a point where you felt comfortable in writing something which may or may not, represent the truth at the end of the day?
Yeah, well, I don't think I could have done that in 2020. But by 2023, the back end of it, when I came up with the idea, or middle of 2023, I'd done so much research about things like Antarctica, about people like Bird. I'd looked into Amelia Earhart, and as well as looking at a whole host of other things, like vaccinations, like pandemics, like moon landings, like NASA, etc., etc. I felt that I had enough knowledge and enough, basically enough substance to come up with an idea, and that. But I couldn't have done it back in 2020. I mean, the thing that kind of switched me onto Antarctica was a set of videos that were initially on YouTube, called the Lost Histories of Flat Earth, it was called. And it was by a guy called Iwaranon, or Iwaranon. And I watched that, and one of the things it touched on was the fact that Antarctica could potentially be just one huge ice wall encircling our world, our realm. And this really got me thinking. And from there, when I then started looking into the history of Antarctic expeditions, so looking into people like James Cook, James Clark Ross, obviously Scott, Amundsen, Shackleton, all these people, it kind of started to think, yeah, maybe there's something in this. And
Yeah.
so by the time it got to like middle of 23, my head was sort of just swimming and buzzing with ideas. And then when I saw those two videos with a ship getting turned back and an aeroplane being turned back, being threatened with being shot down or blown out of the water, I thought, right, the time is right. Let's put some ideas down on paper and see where it goes.
Yeah.
Presumably, sorry to jump in there, but I was just going to say, presumably your baddies,
Yeah.
they because they're doing what they do, that somewhere in the chain of command knows what is beyond all of this,
Yeah.
and I guess that within the story, some of what they know comes out, or how they know about
Yeah.
it, and why they're so protective,
Yeah.
which again gives the reader something to sort of go, oh, that's an interesting theory.
True. Yeah. By the way, can you hear me okay without my headphones? Because they were driving me crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Blimey.
Good.
Definitely.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I forgot what I was going to say now.
The baddies.
The baddies.
Oh, the baddies. Yeah.
The baddies.
Yeah. The baddies. The main baddie is Adam and Dobbo's superior officer. Wing Commander Prendergast is called. And again, I won't give too much away, but he is an intelligence agent as well as being an RAF officer. So yeah, I mean, they don't know this at the time, but it all becomes clear eventually. But yeah, he was recruited at Cranwell, during his RAF training. Into MI5 or 6, I can't remember which one we said, but anyway, it doesn't matter. 6, yeah. The Foreign Office, that's it. The Foreign Office, but not the Foreign Office.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
So I mean, if we take this into real life, presumably there are people down there who know what's beyond it without question. And so how do these people, do you think, live with themselves, knowing they have the answer to a huge secret that may or may not benefit mankind, as we know mankind? As you've sort of thought about this in great detail, they're holding something, whether it is of benefit to us or not. Because you could say, well, they're holding the secrets, they don't want us to be, what's beyond there may be too much for us, or it may undermine everything they stand for.
Well, I mean, the whole essence of recruitment into the intelligence services is that you have to have psychopathic tendencies, and they suss this out over a long period of time. One of my friend's daughters has just gone to Cambridge University, for example, and she's already been approached by them, although they've not said that that's who they are yet, but they're slowly reeling her in, offering her gifts and free taxi rides anywhere in Cambridge. And she is kind of questioning it, but she doesn't know what's happening.
Are you there to protect her and say, hang on a minute, just be careful of these guys?
Not me personally, but her dad is kind of saying this as well.
Yes.
He's warning her about what could possibly be going on. But that's just to give the listeners an idea of how it works. They groom you and vet you over a longish period of time, and if you don't, if you go all the way through the process and then they decide you're not psychopathic enough, for example, then they won't recruit you. So it's just part of an ongoing process. So to answer your original question about whether people, how do people live with themselves, they live with themselves because they're mainly psychopathic people in the intelligence services, and that's how they do it. People like you and I, and we three, we couldn't do it because we've got a conscience. Well, obviously, psychopaths by their very definition have no conscience, so that's how it works.
And also there's this element that they're trained and programmed to believe that they're in a very, very special club that the rest of us are not in. The rest of us are not in that club, and that gives them. They feel that gives them power and influence, and a status above the rest of us mere mortals.
Well, it sounds a fascinating read. I want to know now, just from the mechanics of writing, because as I said at the beginning, when you're writing on your own, it's quite easy. How have you managed to write together? Do you write a bit and send it over, and somebody corrects it and says, no, we can't have that? How's the mechanics of writing with two people worked?
Well, we sort of concentrated on different elements of the novel, really, didn't we, John? I mean,
Yeah.
the actual plot, I would say, was more my responsibility. The actual adventure story, where John obviously was directing me while I was coming up with this and while I was putting it together. But John was contributing lots and lots of historical stuff. Yeah,
Right.
and together. So he was kind of writing those bits. I was writing the kind of the actual story and the adventure part. But we were checking each other's work on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Coming up with ideas. Like,
Yeah.
oh well, let's bring it Amelia Earhart into it. Let's bring Scott into it. Can we weave this in with the creation of the Federal Reserve, for example, or
Right.
the Titanic, or Operation High Jump, etc. So we kind of worked on different elements of the book. So the story was mainly, I would say, mainly my responsibility. John, I think you just wrote, but John wrote the conclusion, didn't you, to that? You wrote the concluding chapter.
I wrote the last chapter.
Yeah, the last chapter, which I was really glad about, because I was struggling, Richard. Actually, I was really struggling.
I know that. I mean, I'm still struggling with my conclusion. You get to, because it's this jigsaw, isn't it? That you've got all these pieces, and then as you're writing, you think actually that bit really needs to go earlier on.
Oh yeah,
Exactly
and I
that.
need
Exactly
to
that.
do some foreshadowing of what might happen down
Yeah,
here.
well, absolutely. Well, at one point, we actually, I went over to Andy's house, spent some time over there, because he lives about 80 miles from me? Something like
about
that.
80, yeah.
Yeah, and we actually printed off all the chapters, because there's 60 chapters in it. It's only it's not that big a book. It's only like that kind of thickness, but there's 60 chapters. They're all quite short chapters. And we actually laid them all out on the floor or on the table, and we shuffled them, and we decided that bit goes there, that bit goes there. Some of it was obvious, but other bits we had to kind of think about and think, well, are we better putting this bit in here or in there? And we kind of just did it, like you said, Richard, it's a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it is like editing a video. You're going, well, I need that to come in, and that little bit of information that they're going to find out, I just want to sort of hint at earlier on.
Exactly that.
It is great fun, but holding it all in your mind, this story, because it just takes over, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Yeah. Which is different, and that's the thing I think that people don't quite get if they've never written a novel or a story. It's very different from the factual stuff, which you can just quickly go and look. Well, not quickly necessarily, although the internet. I imagine the internet has helped immensely in terms of just checking dates and bits of footage
and also had to do research on a lot of the historical characters as well.
Yes,
such as James Forrestal, such as Admiral Byrd, such as Amelia Earhart, such as Captain Scott and his crew as well. So we had to do kind of separate research on that sort of stuff as well.
And just talking about these days, a lot of people are relying on AI for their information, which is a worry for me, because I mean, when we had there was a fire that was everyone was saying was one of these direct energy weapons, about 8 months ago now. And even before the clear up, somebody had used AI to print the book to tell the story. And it was like, you've published that too quickly to be credible.
It's cheating. That is absolute cheating.
And we see it in YouTube videos now. There's an AI script, there's an AI voiceover, there's it's pulling in stock footage, and people can produce videos at the press of a button. There's no creativity really from a human point of view. But that's a worry, is it not, for future people who are doing research to understand how research works? If they can just go to something which doesn't give you any references, is scraping the internet, you don't know how valid all this, and then it comes out in black and white and says, oh yeah, these are the facts. And kids these days are being brought up on that. Is that a worry for you as writers?
I think it's a worry in general. It's not so much, I wouldn't sort of necessarily say as writers. I think as human beings, it's a worry. The fact that our lives are almost becoming artificial reality. It's just, how long will it be, for example, before they make feature films that don't require any actors because the
Yes.
images look exactly like real people, and
Well,
we're getting very close to that right now.
Yeah, they've already started doing it with adverts.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't watch mainstream television at all, but
No,
occasionally,
wise man.
yeah, occasionally I see adverts on things like YouTube and stuff like that. And there's one came up the other day, and I think it was just for something like a bank. And there was, and I just said to Karen, my wife, I just said, every person on this advert is AI generated.
Yeah.
So these aren't actors playing these roles. And as John said, it's a threat to all humanity. It's a threat to writers, actors, performers, songwriters, everybody. I mean, the fact that you can just throw an idea to AI and say, I want a song writing about, I don't know, for example, Donald Trump in a rockabilly style with a banjo solo in the middle.
Yeah.
You'll get one.
You'll get one.
What a horrible thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrendous, but you will get that. And I mean, myself and John saw that, didn't we, John? Because not long after the book was published, you went on Amazon and you said, "Oh, you can create an audio book through AI."
Yeah.
Yes.
In no time.
But it's rubbish.
But it was awful.
And it's rubbish.
It was
At the
awful,
moment.
wasn't it, John? It was awful, wasn't it, John?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was
yeah.
awful.
Well, I was gonna ask you. I was gonna move on to the audio book, but just before I do, I mean, the one thing it seems to me that what AI does is it means that if you have written a book or a song or anything, the more that you personally can get yourselves in front of an audience, like we are today, that people can go, oh yeah, I resonate with the guys. They're laughing, they're having fun. It sounds like an interesting book. It's not just created by a machine,
No.
and so just bland and no life experience. And I think that the more we can do that, the more people can see real people, flawed real people, as it were, the more they're going to be interested. On the audiobook, are you going to record an audiobook?
We're already doing it. Oh, correct.
Oh, are you?
Mr. Ross is already doing that. Yes.
Yeah. I'm doing it at the moment, Richard, but it's taking a long time. It's taking me a long
hard
time.
work,
It's
isn't it? I
really
wrote a
hard
kids
work.
book some time ago, and somebody said, "Oh, you should record it because you're good with your voices and stuff."
Yeah.
And you're taking breaths, you're making mistakes, you're misreading, and then you've got all these files and the editing and all of that to try and get it spot on.
Yeah, but
Ain't easy.
I'm in the process.
And the cost of having it done by a third party is just horrendous.
Yes.
You're talking thousands of pounds. It take years to recover the cost.
Yeah.
So how are you doing it, Andy? Have you got that sort of deep throated voice?
Well, I'm doing it pretty much.
in
I'm doing it pretty much in the voice that I've got now. So I've done it I've done it in my normal Yorkshire accent. I've not tried to. The only difference is that if Adam's speaking, because he's from Cambridge, you see, is Adam. So,
I see.
So I'm not quite when I'm doing Adam, I'm not quite as Yorkshire as I am when I do Dobbo, because he's from Scarborough. So so Dobbo is based loosely on myself and my son, I would say. So I find it easy to be Dobbo, but not quite so easy to be Adam. Yeah.
Funny you should say that. When I was away this week, I've just done a speaking tour of the Southwest, and more than three, it could be 4 or 5 people actually came up to me and said, "You're Dobbo, aren't you?"
Really?
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
But it's yes, it is hard work, and because that's the thing that people don't really appreciate. They just listen to it and they're in their car and they have no notion of all the work that's gone into it. But it's there. It is there forever until they start burning books again. But that's but that's an interesting point, because everything is digital now.
Yeah.
And more stuff. We're all being forced with our deeds of our house to books and things. But when you've got something printed, it is very difficult to get rid of that.
Yeah, unless you say, Richard, burn them. The thing is about digital books is that if every book in the world was digital, they could amend them, change them to their heart's content. As in fact, that does happen in 1984. That's what Winston Smith's job in 1984 is, isn't it? Is altering history by changing books and newspapers.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that Amazon Kindle, some of these older books, when they think, instead of just saying there's a warning for those woke people who can't cope with old terms, like it was a gay day type thing, and they need to have a warning. They are being subtly rewritten, and even if you've downloaded the book, or you think that you've downloaded the book, when it now references the server, you've got a new version of that book.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's quite scary.
Well, it is
It
scary.
is. It's already happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you say.
Another example is the online Scrabble word dictionary. Do you play? I don't know about you guys, but me and my wife play Scrabble a lot. We play
Right.
Scrabble a lot, and we use the online Scrabble word checking dictionary. And there are now words in normal dictionaries that people have used all through history that you can now no longer get a yes hit on the Scrabble online word dictionary.
Gosh,
And I'll give you an
that's
example.
going to worry all my viewers now.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. The word bitch.
Yeah.
Not there.
The word bitch now, if you put bitch into the online Scrabble word finder, it says no, it's not a match.
Well, I mean, that's ridiculous because bitch is a female dog, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's just one example. We've probably found over the last couple of years about 10 different words, but that's the one that always comes to mind because I just think that's the most ridiculous one. The most ridiculous one.
Well,
It's
that is.
definitely Orwellian.
It
Definitely.
is completely Orwellian. Yeah.
And there are lots more examples of books being changed, not just the digital versions, but actually the print versions. One that I've been reading quite a bit over the last few years and referring to is Mein Kampf, which is probably a bit of a dodgy subject, but I'm only using this as an example. Apparently, a lot of what Hitler said in Mein Kampf has been redacted, been absolutely deleted and replaced with less, shall we say, less politically incorrect stuff.
Right.
So,
and that, I mean, that's why buying secondhand books, if one, that we've seen how secondhand books have been hit. And of course, you just think, oh, that's because, there's big places like Amazon and what have you. But there may be more nefarious reasons why everything is no longer available.
Yeah.
Because, you can buy a new copy of Mein Kampf, let's suppose, and it will be very different from the original.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which is why we should hold on. I mean, I know we're going a bit off topic here, but one of the most staggering things I find now is when I visit people's houses, very few of them have got books on their shelves.
Very true. Yeah.
I mean, used to go around and whilst they're making you a cup of tea, you'd look at their bookshelf to see what kind of interests they have. LPs used to be the same. You see what music they listen to. Now, of course, they're so minimalist with everything and it's all digital.
Yes.
You can't see what your friend or neighbour is is reading, but the government can because they can access the digital side of it, which is a worry.
And they'll soon be able to access all our purchase history as well if cash disappears.
Well, exactly. And that's why it's always good to go and turn up at your talks, John, so you could buy your book in cash and get a genuine original copy.
Absolutely.
So on that note, then, he says, swiftly getting into it, where can people get the book, 6 Degrees South, Beyond the Ice Wall, and how much is it?
Right. Do you want me to go, Andy, or do you want to go?
Yes, please, John. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Basically, from ourselves, it's on my website, falsificationofhistory.co.uk. So there's an online shop on there on which you can order signed copies. Of course, you've got the ubiquitous Amazon if you're not in the UK, because we can't post abroad. That's just too, and you're going to find this yourself, Richard, as well. It's just a waste of time trying to post abroad. Some of them get there. A lot of them don't. They get turned back by customs. They just disappear into the ether. So unfortunately, we cannot post abroad. But certainly for anyone in the UK, you can order off the website. If you're outside UK, your only option is Amazon. But there's also a link through we have a website called 60-degrees-south.com, which is a link through to my website as well. So there are kind of two sources in a sense, but it's really only one. So those are the options. You can also email either of us and order it direct if you wish to do that. You don't have to go through the website and just make a bank transfer to us, and that happens occasionally. So
And hardback and paperback?
No, not hardback, just paperback and Kindle versions.
And Kindle. And, oh, yes, Kindle. I forgot about Kindle. I don't have a Kindle myself.
No.
No, me neither.
But that's another way of doing it. And I mean, obviously, it's better if people get it through your website.
Definitely.
Because I guess you get
it's also cheaper because it's £20 on Amazon and it's £15 directly from us. So.
Oh yeah, so there's a marked difference. And of course, I imagine you take a big sack of them when you go and do your talks?
Yeah, well, actually, the Southwest tour that I did 5 venues, or 4 venues, one of them 2 nights at one venue, and I sold out of them after the first 2 nights. So
right.
So anybody who was watching that was there and were disappointed, by all means, get on the website.
But it must be difficult
it
must be difficult for you to sort of go, because presumably you're having to have them printed in advance and then buy all the copies.
I was just saying
around.
I was just saying to Andy this morning, it's a really difficult balancing act, especially when you've got 9 books, which I have now, and trying to balance all that and manage it. Because it takes a while for us to receive our author copies. It's not like going on Amazon Prime and getting them the next day. It take at least a week usually. So it is, and sometimes in busy periods it can be 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it is quite a management nightmare, but we get by somehow, don't we?
Yep.
Yeah. No, well, that's the main thing. So if people are looking for, as we're into the spring and we've got some nice hot weather and they're sitting out there on the veranda or in their garden, they want a little bit of reading to keep them going and think about the cold Antarctic when they're sitting in the blazing sun. This is the book for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it will. Presumably it poses a few questions for the people when they've read it to go, wow, that's an interesting thought.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, the reviews we've been getting from the book, both on Amazon and through the website, have been fabulous. Everybody said it's a book they didn't want to put down. We've had a couple of readers said that they stayed up all night just to finish it because they just got into the story.
And they couldn't put it down.
Yeah, I mean, my son, who's in his 30s, he's my staunchest critic. He's my staunchest critic. He thought he was great. He thought he was really, really good, and he told me so. And I thought, and I just said, well, that's praise indeed coming from you.
Yes.
And the feedback that we've had has been really gratifying, and I think that's.
I can tell you, if my son read my book and said to me it was great, I wouldn't have to sell another copy.
No,
that would be groundbreaking.
Yeah, my life's work's done. My life's work is done, Richard. Yeah.
Now, John, you hinted that there may be a sequel.
Ooh.
There will be a sequel. We are, imminently. I say imminently, probably in the next few weeks. We're gonna start mapping that out. We've got a rough idea of what the plot is going to be. It's going to be a continuation. It's going to be some of the same characters. Some have been killed off, but the ones still remaining, it's going to be the same ones, but it's going to be a whole different approach, a whole different angle of attack. What happens once they become ensconced in Antarctica, because they've had to leave this realm because of circumstances. So they will be operating from within the within Antarctica itself, but there's a whole new plot twist coming. So watch this space.
Watch this space. Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. What about that? Thank you so much for coming on the show, and I hope when you've got the new book, you'll come back and lay a few little hints about what that is, and
definitely.
And let's hope that the book is a huge success.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Well, it's a pleasure. So there we go. John Hamer and Andy Ross. The book is 60 Degrees South, Beyond the Ice Wall, and you can get it. Well, John, send me the links, and I'll put it on the description so people can go straight there.
I will.
You'll be supporting authors, which is a very good thing to do. He says, as he's slowly getting himself to be an author.
Yes.
Everyone's writing books at the moment. But it's great. That is great. So there we go. That's all the audience needs to know, and I hope that you guys have lots of success with it. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us, Richard. It's been a pleasure. As always.
Thank you. Cheers.
Fantastic. Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. It's been interesting for me to talk to other authors about the process of writing and things, because can be quite a lonely process when you're trying to do all these things and hold it all into your heads. Anyway, enjoy the book. Thank you for watching. Until next time, when I'm back with more monologues and, of course, some more wonderful guests, take care, look after yourselves, and bye for now.